ignore the first 20% of his talk. The first 20% is to open your butthole up wide. And then you're like, wait, did he say butthole? And then you're like, yes, that with that I mean the mind. Your mind is now open. Now you can finally perceive, you can finally see beyond your preconception. I have battled you out on your playing field. So you are aware that the playing field is bigger than what you thought. That is provocation.
I think before we start the podcast, we should talk about CA because like you three, all three have something to common.
Yep.
Achha,
Yeah,
you are also a chartered accountant?
No, I'm a CEO dropout, sadly. Or maybe happily, you never. Yeah, you know.
Yes. सबको छुड़वाऊंगा सीए धीमे धीमे करके. आईसीआई का नंबर 1 दुश्मन प्रखर गुप्ता.
प्रखर तुम सीए छोड़ा था या फिर लाइक हो गया था पूरा?
नहीं, मेरा नहीं हुआ पूरा भाई. मैंने फाइनल, I gave my final in May 2017 and I think April 1st 2017 I'd already received an acceptance at NYU. And it was not like I still wanted to finish it. I really worked hard, but the way they failed me, I was like, ये नहीं करना है अब. इतनी बेइज्जती के साथ नहीं जीना मेरे को जीवन में. मैं ना कल रात को कोटा फैक्ट्री देख रहा था अकेले बैठ के रात के अंधेरे में अपने कमरे में. उसमें वो एक सीन नहीं होता है सीजन 2 एपिसोड 1 में जहाँ पे एक बंदा होता है सुसु, उसका दोस्त होता है वैभव और सुसु एक भैया के पास जाते हैं जो गंजे से होते हैं, जो वो तोते को कुछ खिला रहे होते हैं. एंड दैट भैया बिगिंस आस्किंग एग्जिस्टेंशियल क्वेश्चंस अबाउट हम आईआईटी कर भी क्यों रहे हैं, राइट, ऑल ऑफ दैट स्टफ. And so I had that moment, but in anger. Right? So my dad would find out result आधा घंटा पहले. जब वो result upload हो रहे होते थे, Papa would call up somebody in the institute. He knows everybody. He's like, क्या हुआ मेरे बेटे का? And I would always be like, मत पूछो. एक तो वैसे ही मेरे को पता है क्या हो क्या ना हो पता नहीं. उसके ऊपर आप पता कर लोगे तो फिर और अलग से बुरा लगेगा, ठीक है? And so he calls somebody up and I'm telling him not to. In the same moment, he's like, अच्छा नहीं हुआ. And I'm like, ये मजाक तो नहीं कर रहे. Then he's like, बेटा नहीं हुआ तुम्हारा. मैंने बोला अच्छा बढ़िया. अच्छा उसी दिन सुबह मेरा कोलंबिया से एक्सेप्टेंस आ गया था. So I was like, हम हो रहे हैं 24, कल मिलेंगे अगली बार.
What do you mean you were not happy with the way you were failed?
Bro, 1-1.5 सब्जेक्ट में फेल हो आदमी तो फिर उससे कोई वो भी होता है ना, मार्क्स रह गए इतना सा. नहीं भाई, हम 2-3 में फेल थे. और ब्रो मैं ना like I am not a bad student. Like I'm a very good student. And so I always throughout school life effortlessly 90% plus, boards effortlessly 90% plus, CS effortlessly completed. Columbia was effortless, right? When I came to Columbia, it was so hard for me to digest very often that this is an Ivy League school, because the metric of working hard that us Indians are used to with our competitive frameworks and competitive exams and so on is not the same around the world, bro. The world's not going that bonkers about getting into an IIT. They have their own crazy things everywhere. But getting into IIT, or for that matter, doing your CA, UPSC, whatever, is a completely different stratosphere that is specific only to India. So I worked very hard, bro. Each of my exam copies throughout the CA-CS adventure, each of them has about 40-50 pages written out. Like मैं वो बच्चा था जो एक्स्ट्रा शीट पहले ही मांग लेता था, क्योंकि मेरे को पता है कि मेरे को 3 या 4 एक्स्ट्रा शीट लगने वाले हैं पेपर में. And the only thing I could never do, which I cannot do even now, is rote memorize. I have no concept of that. No matter how hard I try, like I can never learn a script and deliver it. I make so many errors. Learning is not the same for me as memorization. So beyond that, everything else was on point. To have been failed in so many different exams, I was like, no. And then also with IPCC में पहली बार भी मैं fail था पूरा, ठीक है? Group 1, Group 2. But Group 1, I passed in revaluation. Which is very rare. Okay. I was 8 number से fail था मैं, और exactly 9 number बढ़े थे. And so I was already coming from a place where I was like, इनको तो कोई, और पता है literally क्यों? एक question unmarked था मेरा. जब वो कॉपीज आती है ना, हाँ वो चेक ही नहीं था क्वेश्चन. हाँ वो क्वेश्चन ही चेक नहीं था. जब कॉपीज आई तो देखा, अबे तुम्हारी आंखों के सामने क्वेश्चन है यार. हमें नहीं पता चेकिंग कैसे होती है, हमें नहीं पता क्या क्या दिमाग लगता है चेकिंग में, बेवकूफ बना रहे हो. So I had lost faith. I had lost faith in this adventure, and I was like, this is no point. I'm not going to put myself through this brutal emotional unhappiness for the sake of getting a degree that I'm not even going to do anything with. When it is clear I'm going to America, might as well make the move. And back then the clarity was not represented in these articulated forms. It was very angry. Full stop. Like I remember that was the first day in my life when I'd given galis in front of my parents. और वो ऐसे कुत्ता कमीना वाली गालियां नहीं थी, समझ रहे हो? मतलब वो ये था कि हाँ, कि मेरे को बोल मत देना कुछ. तो I was like मैं नहीं कर रहा ये. And it is not to say कि किसी को नहीं करना चाहिए. Frankly, I don't want to be a bad example, but I want people to know at what degree and what level of hard work they're doing, and I hope people can make it useful, man. Because very often, you know, this is the college syndrome universally. तुम कॉलेज में, स्कूलों में जो पढ़ाई करते हो, तुम अपने उसका कोई बाहर एप्लीकेशन होता नहीं खास. तो अब तुम पढ़ रहे हो, या तो एटलीस्ट मजा कर लो, या तुम एक्चुअली कुछ सीख लो, क्योंकि इतनी मेहनत कर रहे हो क्यों सिर्फ एक एग्जाम पास करने के लिए. लाइक उसमें एक तो वर्चुअस एलिमेंट डाल दो ना. सिर्फ इतना यूटिलिटेरियन मत बनाओ अपनी मेहनत को. कुछ तो हो जो लॉन्ग टर्म देके जाए तुम्हें इससे. बस दैट इज ऑल आई वुड से अबाउट
मेरे साथ भी थोड़ा सिमिलर एग्जांपल वाज लाइक मतलब इट वाज नॉट एन angry reaction, but yeah, matlab something happened in my life like which was very transformative, and after that I started questioning कि like मैं जेई की तैयारी कर क्यों रहा हूँ, मेरे को करने का मन ही नहीं है. जब like I don't do I really want to be an engineer, तो मतलब उसके बाद से तो वो डाउनहिल था. उसके बाद वो बहुत गंदा डाउनहिल था, बट उसके बाद तैयारी
आपका एक बार में निकल. No, I want to ask Mudit भाई, आपका एक बार में निकल गया था भाई?
See, Prakhar, honestly, I hated the studying the curriculum so much that I told my father I cannot study it for a day beyond what is the bare minimum to study. So इसलिए मैं एक बार में निकल गया. I think it was because of my lack of empathy with the subjects कि भाई इसको करके निकालना ही है एक बार में. And then अभी I was just talking to her like, do I run a CA practice or anything of that sort? मैंने कोई बोला था कि भाई मेरा उसमें hardly सब चीजों में time invest होता है. I don't file my own GST returns. I don't file my own income tax returns after. And it's not that ego में I don't. I actually can't. If I have to sit, I have to brush up things. कि भाई कैसे हो रहा है ये. तो वो निकल गया bro, but I think our feelings about it were similar.
I think this will be a question for both of you. Like when you were doing CA, like either of you knew like what you are going to do with your life, or like you just knew like the whole life was around CA only at that time. Like whether there was an alternative.
Basically, did you know that?
अगर CA नहीं किया तो क्या करना?
Yeah, exactly. Like life में करना क्या apart from CA? कुछ idea था कि नहीं? सिर्फ CA चल रहा था.
बड़े भाई पहले आप.
See, मेरे ख्याल से I had no, at least effort level पे I was only doing CA at that point in time. और किसी चीज में मैं effort नहीं डाल रहा था. My only passion outside of it was public speaking. So I knew it had to either be a combination of both of them, but definitely not something which was only CA and filing returns. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It was just not meant for me. So I wasn't completely clear and about what I have to do after it. I had 2-3 options and I was still exploring. और उस समय वो thoughts इतने ruminate होते थे कि क्या करना है. I actually had to consciously stop myself from doing that because I'm thinking then I'm not focusing on this book that's in my hand and the exam is in 5 months or 6 months or 7 months or whatever it is. And we can have a longer discussion on long-term goals and how I began to see them because of that experience. But प्रखर आप बताओ क्या सीन था आपका?
भाई मेरे को तो अभी भी नहीं पता. मैं फ्रैंकली ये तो मैं झूठ भी नहीं बोल रहा. मेरी लाइफ में सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन यूनिवर्सली यही रहा है, क्या करना है. और मैंने तो इस क्वेश्चन को ही इवेंचुअली तोड़ना शुरू कर दिया कि क्यों पता होना चाहिए क्या करना है. उससे क्या हो जाएगा वो है. और क्या डिफरेंस है कि मेरे को अभी से पता है, which is top down planning, right? I decide this is what I want to be. I set out the structure. Or bottom up planning, which is where I focus on skills, opportunity, access, things that I can build and let things happen from there. So I'll give you an example. One thing is, say in the context of making a YouTube video, I imagine a video in my head, I write a script out, I record that video. The other thing is, I just bring the tools and then suddenly ideas begin to appear to me as to how I want to deliver my message. So I get a green screen, I get a camera, I get a microphone, and suddenly I'm like, maybe this is possible now, right? And so I was condemned to the latter because the former was being pressured to me too heavily by the world outside. And I was like, no, look, somewhere in growing up and carrying the spirit of rebellion, I also recognized one larger point, which is that most people that you're rebelling against, most people that are trying to make a point do not have their shit sorted. Are you happy doing what you're doing? If not, then who the hell are you to tell me? Like, तुमने क्या कर लिया ये करके वे जो तुम मेरे पे प्रेशर डाल रहे हो, या मैं तुम्हारा प्रेशर लूं? सब डालते नहीं है. किसके पास टाइम है तुम पे प्रेशर डालने का? तुम्हारे दिमाग में चलती रहती होगा, राइट? सो मेरे को याद है, मैं जब कोलंबिया चला भी गया, my parents were a little reluctant, particularly my father, my uncle, even my older brother. My mother was very understanding, like mothers are. And then when I'd come back, I came back in November 17 for my brother's wedding, in December 17 for vacation. जब भी मैं आता था, पापा आप क्या करना है? क्या करना है? ठीक है? And I'd be like, क्या पता है यार, रुक जाओ ना, अभी तो like खुलेगा, दरवाजे खुलेंगे. And then incidentally, the whole YouTube thing happened afterwards. And I don't even think YouTube is what I want to do. Like YouTube's just वो bottom up planning का part है. Build capital, build access, build resource, build a voice, figure your creativity out, so on and so forth. That's what that is sort of helping me do. What I want to do is a question I'm very willing to discover. That is what the adventure is about. So, no idea what I want to do, frankly. I have some semblance of like, अच्छा मेरे को इस पे दिमाग लगाना है, मेरे को यहाँ जाके रहना है कुछ टाइम, ठीक है, बच्चे करने हैं, मेरे को शौक है, कुत्ते पालेंगे, बट उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं पता. घर वालों के साथ रहना है, घर वालों को यहाँ लेके आना है, कुछ टाइम इंडिया में बिताना है. इस टाइप के थोड़े पीसेस हैं, बट द चेस बोर्ड इज नॉट क्लियर. बाय नो मींस इज इट क्लियर टू मी.
Mudit, do you have this bottom-up approach, or like you play with top-bottom approach? Like, okay, first I have to figure out the goal, then I have to like plan accordingly.
I've had a very clinical approach to this for a large portion of my life. कि I should be able to see to an extent कि मैं ये चीज कर रहा हूँ, that the effort that I'm doing right now is intentional towards something. ठीक है, मैं एफर्ट दे रहा हूँ और मुझे एग्जैक्टली नहीं पता where it adds up is difficult for me to see. So that's number one. The second is which, and as Prakhar was sharing, was contrasting with my journey, कि मुझे वो I need the dopamine on those milestones for recognition कि ठीक है ये चीज हो रही है, ये कुछ कर रहे हैं. I think that has been a driving force for me so far, which I envy and appreciate Prakhar in the sense ki to be able to have the faith in yourself to say I'm discovering at this point in time, at an age where you had to quit something and restart somewhere else. I think it requires more guts than Prakhar even you might realize, or perhaps
no bro, it requires you to be stupid. Believe me. Like क्या guts यार, दिमाग होना चाहिए ना guts के लिए. 21 साल के बच्चे में क्या दिमाग होता है? Stupidity होती है. You do it because you're stupid, but you don't give up. And then, as a combination of being stupid and persistent, you make it. There is something quite unique to that flavor. People don't recognize the value of being stupid. You let go of so much gibberish because you're stupid. It's great.
Because logically it won't make sense. Logically,
it won't.
It won't add up. Logically, it won't add up. And so I have... Nahi, Prakhar, you complete it.
No, but I've also seen medium run mein, you know what the other thing is. So, say, logically it doesn't add up. Who's dictating the logic? Everybody else. I've seen everybody I know swing to my side after. Like as soon as things started working in this direction, right? Whether that be YouTube, whether that be living in America, whether that be having a life where I feel more fulfilled, they were like, यार ये सही है, इसके पास भेजते हैं अपने बच्चों को, वो हमारे बच्चों को बताएगा क्या करना है. And so you were like, अबे ना तुम्हारा धर्म ईमान है कोई, ना मेरा धर्म ईमान है कोई, हम दोनों कैरेक्टर प्ले कर रहे हैं. मतलब ये तो वो वाली बात हो गई, राइट? लाइक कोई फिक्सिटी है ही नहीं ब्रो. हम अगर if you look at Indians and if you go to the backest backdrop, if you pull the curtain on the Indian mind, the underlying sentiment that dictates everything is that of fear. And once you stupidly cross that field of fear and you're able to look at everything around you objectively as if it is not, you're able to see that it's not that,
इतना कुछ है नहीं.
It's not that, हाँ, इतना डरने का मतलब थोड़ा दिमाग लगाने का जरूरत है. You have to be careful, you have to be all of those things. Afraid is a different story. Maybe I'm wrong. So forgive me.
Actually listened to this bottom up approach पहले भी from you only, but then I thought कि like maybe it doesn't work like that in long term. So अभी मैं bottom up approach ले सकता हूँ because I just don't know things. So I have to figure out shit. तो उसके लिए मेरे को बहुत सारे opportunities के साथ flirt करना पड़ेगा. जब मैं वो कर लूंगा, उसके बाद एक टाइम के बाद मेरे पास इनफ डेटा होगा कि हाँ मैं एक गोल सेट कर सकता हूँ और उसके बाद अकॉर्डिंगली प्लान कर सकता हूँ. तो मेरे को लग रहा है कि आफ्टर वन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम आई विल बी लाइक ऑन द टॉप बॉटम अप्रोच. और कुछ चीज़ों में मेरे को लग रहा है मैं ऑलरेडी टॉप बॉटम अप्रोच ले रहा हूँ. जैसे लाइक आई ट्राई टू लाइक टेक एज मच अपॉर्चुनिटीज एज पॉसिबल। मेरे को वीडियो एडिटिंग नहीं आती, मैंने एक दिन वीडियो एडिटिंग का क्लाइंट उठा लिया कि चलो वीडियो एडिटिंग करके देख, आती नहीं है हाँ, लेकिन क्लाइंट ले लिया है। तो ऐसे करके कुछ भी अपॉर्चुनिटीज ले लेता हूँ। उसके बाद मेरे को बट लाइक देयर इज स्टिल वन गोल कि हाँ मेरे को 30 की उम्र में एक किताब लिखनी है, वो टॉप बॉटम पे रहेगा, बाकी सारा बॉटम टॉप लाइक ठीक है अपॉर्चुनिटीज खेत। तो मे बी इट्स लाइक अ मिक्सचर ऑफ बोथ, इट्स नॉट लाइक
100%. Bro, like I could not have written this book without Mudit. मैं लिखता ना तो वो तीसरे चैप्टर तक आते आते ही कोई और बुक बन जाती. Because the problem with the bottom up approach is there is no structure. There is no fixity. There is no like plan. There is no path. There is none of that. So you, in fact, and I think that might be the difference between, like, I don't know what the opposite is, but it's part of the fact that my spirit is inherently creative. I do business and I do everything else. वो एक separate issue है. But अंदर से मैं creative हूँ, और पेंटर आदमी ऐसे ही होता है ना, ब्रश उठाता है, बनाते बनाते कहीं पहुंच जाता है ना? तो मेरे को तो चाहिए contrasting personalities. Everybody around me should be structured, so that my unstructured progress can be actually utilized. Otherwise वो हाँ. So like having Mudit around is so sensible because I'm like, अच्छा प्रखर चुप, ठीक है, like कुछ अकलमंदी की बात भी है जीवन में, सिर्फ सब कुछ डंडा लेके बाहर निकल जाना नहीं है. So
I can see that in like both of your writing. I was reading that you broke down a like speech of Modi ji, and I was reading that, and I was reading your stuff. So whenever I see your stuff, like written stuff, like you used to like write long Instagram captions, I used to read them. It starts from somewhere, it ends up somewhere. And Mudit always stick to the point. Mudit was on the point. He was very like okay, bullet points use करेंगे, last में पूरा conclusion, starting के हिसाब से conclusion भी बिल्कुल end में वही आना चाहिए. You just go somewhere, and I could see that in like in writing. Also, if
that's
like,
very interesting.
That's a brilliant observation, and I would. I'm projecting things too far in this conversation for some reason, maybe, but I think that's how we also live our lives. So Prakhar puts pen to paper, and then it goes wherever. So it's like a movie that's playing in front of him, and he's documenting that movie. For me, it is very clinical. It is about अच्छा ठीक है, ये 5-6 चीजों के बारे में लिखना है, and then I write it over multiple sittings, and then I come back a week later and I read it and I go through it. Prakhar की writing में वो चीज नहीं है, and I personally find that kind of writing far more refreshing. And I'm not just patronizing कि ठीक है भाई, हमें एक दूसरे के लिए अच्छी बातें करनी है. When I was talking to my friends about it, my thing was very simple. That is how I appreciate that kind of thing, because there's a certain degree of value providing to your audience when your thoughts are coming on paper unfiltered. Nobody's doing that. A lot of people are providing structures because they are themselves in a structure, but to really go outside that structure and be able to do that, and most of those chapters are written in one go for Prakhar. और मेरे लिए वो चीज they are multiple sections and multiple topics and research coming together.
I was giving no, I'll tell you this anecdote. I was giving some kind of a write-up interview to some journalist media organization. I'm forgetting their name, forgive me. And they were asking me, what is your like most interesting anecdote from writing the book? And it's exactly this, ठीक है? हमारा ना Friday meetup होता था. Friday या Saturday हम मिलते थे discuss करने के लिए क्या progress है. Because we were doing it at a distance. मेरे को पता है Saturday को मिलना है, मैं Friday को लिखने बैठता था. Friday को 12 बजे लिखने बैठता था मैं दोपहर के, और मैं एक अपनी वोडका की ड्रिंक पोर करता था, या जो भी मेरे पास दारू पड़ी होती थी. Not that I'm very fond of drinking, but I get, when I'm writing, bro, I'm a different person. Like you cannot talk to me. I cannot. अब मेरे को पता नहीं words क्या हैं. मैं थोड़ा ना ऐसे jam हो जाता हूँ अपने system में. So and I'm very fidgety. Like I'll play with something, I'll scratch myself, like it's like I'm getting into some part of me. So the vodka or water or something helps to just like thodi anxiety, chewing gum kha liya is types, right? So I'll have like a drink or whatever. And my job is to finish writing this paragraph or this chapter before I'm too drunk to write it. That's my only target. And the next day I'd speak to Mudit. I'd be like, bro, this is what I wrote. It took me 5 hours, right? We'd be like, 5 घंटे? मैं 5 दिन से लगा हुआ हूँ. अभी भी आता है. You could see the quality of our write-ups also, like, right? There is nothing to be pulled. उसमें कोई गड़बड़ी नहीं है. मेरे में spelling mistake अलग हैं, grammatical mistakes अलग हैं. अच्छा तीसरी ड्रिंक के बाद कहाँ पहुंच गई कहानी पता नहीं, उसको वापस बचा के वापस लाना पड़ रहा है कि भैया दूर चले गए हो आप, राइट? सो दैट इज यू आर वेरी राइट, आई थिंक मुदित, दैट माइट बी वेरी एक्यूरेट. लाइक मैं when I'm writing, I'm on an adventure. And the adventure is mine alone. Like it's personal and I'm really exploring something that I think I kind of know, but I'm not sure. And for Mudit, it's something completely different that I do not know how to do, even if I could. Like I just do not know how to do. So it's so exciting.
To test this theory a little further, like, Prakhar, do you like write an outline before writing something?
No, not recently.
Mudit?
It's a very good question. What I do is the first time I just write it. And then I'm very proud of it. Until I read it out to someone or I give it to someone else. And then I'm like, इनको तो घंटा नहीं समझ आया होगा ये मैंने क्या लिख दिया, क्योंकि मेरे को ही नहीं समझ आ रहा मैंने क्या लिख दिया. And then I write it again from scratch, not using anything I wrote before. So recently what I've started to do with writing is write 5 times before I can begin thinking I'm anywhere near. Same चीज को 5 बार लिखूंगा मैं. And this is something I've learned as a matter of consequence from writing the book with Mudit. Because I realized the sincerity it takes to write something meaningful is a lot more than what I offer. So now I write everything 3 to 4 times at least. Like the next few YouTube videos that I'm working on are going to be very different from the kind of stuff I've done up until in life. And so they required me to write the idea out so I have a good handle of it first. And I've written the same first 2 scripts now at least 3 or 4 times already. And I have to write them again tomorrow. And so yeah, that's how I do. Outline के लिए 4-5 pointer डाल लूंगा.
और Mudit outline
I can't believe you're saying this.
Bro, अच्छा सिर्फ बुरे ही बुरे हैं, हम में अच्छा ही नहीं हो सकती.
की बात नहीं है. But Tushar, to your answer, yes, पूरी outline की कैसे करना है, and what do I know about it? I'm also guessing that for Prakhar it is also that his process of ideation of these are 3 or 4 things that I know: philosophy, history, example. That's what I saw last week. How does it come together? So my guess is he's thinking as he's writing and he's constructing that as he's writing. So that's a process of thinking more than it is a process of writing. For me, it's a process of thinking first and then the process. The outcome is the writing.
I think writing is thinking. Yeah, bro. Like you were spot on with that. Brilliant.
I think because I do both in some sense, so I was like able to relate to both, because like when I'm writing my newsletter, so it's about my ideas, like overthinking, feedback, God, like some kind of that topic. I never have an outline. I just start writing and it works out somehow. Like somehow I will get a good ending. I just don't know how. But when I like write for someone else, like I do a lot of content writing, B2B and everything, I have to make an outline first. I can't write like just away. I have to make an outline first, or the process will become so messy that I have to like take 15 hours to write a 5-hour article. क्योंकि प्रोसेस बहुत मेसी हो जाता है, फिर मैं थोड़ा सा और कंजम्पशन करूंगा, देखूंगा, वापस रीइटरेट करूँ, ये करूँ. नहीं, पहले आउटलाइन लिख लेते फिर हो जाएगा.
मैं पॉइंटर डाल देता हूँ कभी कभी 3-4 की इनको टच अप ऑन करना है, बट कैसे वहां पहुंचेंगे, कब पहुंचेंगे, क्या वक्त आएगा उसके लिए, वो लाइक I was recently writing an essay about what is the purpose of talking. And I came to the conclusion the purpose of talking is to look at your ideas through the eyes of someone else. And so in that sense, what that means is when you are positing an idea, you are not fighting the forces of evil, in the sense you're not fighting what is illogical, wrong, inaccurate, inconsistent, and so on. You're fighting your own basal desires, your own fantasies, and what you wish for is to be true, right? And the idea came to me because I was talking to my girlfriend about it. And I was like, मेरे लिए adventure sport ही है कि मेरे दिमाग में ख्याल आ रहा है और मैं भाग रहा हूं उसके पीछे अपने वर्ड्स के साथ. मेरे लिए वो बहुत थ्रिलिंग है. इसलिए तुम मेरे को और कॉम्प्लिकेटेड टॉपिक दो, तुम मेरे को बोलो फेमिनिज्म के बारे में बात कर, मजा आ जाएगा, मेरा दिमाग खराब हो जाएगा खुशी से, क्योंकि अब मेरे को एक एक शब्द बहुत केयरफुली डालना है. लाइक दैट, इट इज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक वो जो होता नहीं है इसमें वो रस्सी पे चलते हैं लोग. दैट इज हाउ आई फील व्हेन आई एम राइटिंग. लाइक आई एम रियली वॉकिंग अ टाइट रोप. I have to be very careful, writing or speaking for that matter.
Okay. So when you were writing this book, like both of you when writing this book, did you like disagree on something, like something Mudit have written or like Prakhar have written, you're disagreeing with each other on like each other's part? Because I think it's not like you have collaboratively written it. Like the whole book is different. Segmented. It's totally segmented. So like, did you disagree on something?
Intellectually, I don't think so. Right, Mudit bhai?
we haven't disagreed on a lot of things throughout this process. And it was also, I think, Tushar and Nitesh, because at the outset we had kind of outlined what we might lead, those parts of it, and then we gave each other, I think, a certain level of independence to then lead those parts, and only went through them and commented as and when. So because of that, the disagreements were few. And for me, there are so many crossovers in the way Prakhar does things, or when I read those chapters. And even when I was editing his portion of the book, there were moments I could have added my ideas in there, but I wanted it to be a pristine piece of what was that thought process or the chunk of thought together. I didn't want to bring that level of structure in it, because I think also the kind of chapters Tushar and Nitesh has written require a level of experimentation that is not easily available. It has to be anecdotal. How to ask someone on a date, how to talk to strangers. It's 10% structures, 90% art.
Yes.
आप art कैसे सिखाओ लोगों को?
You are right. And you should know Mudit is too nice to ever disagree. Mudit does not disagree, he offers suggestions. So Mudit
ये sarcasm देखो.
Bro, Mudit would just leave a suggestion, be like, I think you can do this here, you should add examples and such. And to me, it would never appear कि example भी डालने होते हैं, because again, I'm doing something far more rudimentary, which is just chasing my thought out, right? And so I learned in that way specifically to sort of add, but I think in hindsight, we did the right thing when it comes to collaboration, which is, one, you find a good collaborator. Like, don't find somebody you are not going to be happy with. Two, you divide what you are going to do. Three, you leave it at that. Right? Like, you leave it at that. अब उसका काम है ना bro, उसको तुमने भरोसा कर लिया पहले, अब क्यों फिर उस किटर करोगे? तो, and then the nature of part 1 and part 2 is very different. Part 2 is low variance situations, bro. You're in a situation where you cannot swing too hard. There is not too many opportunities you get when you're talking to your boss. Maybe one or twice, and that's it. What I am teaching in part 1 is a high variance situation. You can ask 500 girls out or 200 boys out. It's the same thing. They're random people. You can be invited to 50,000 parties before you realize how to do a party, right? So my part had to be anecdotal in that way. And honestly, also, my life has been anecdotal in that way, where I've had to learn that from scratch. While if you gave me a prompt about how to do an interview, I'll probably spill some bullshit that's not going to work. Because I'll be like, हाँ कर लो गलती, पर कर लो गलती तो नौकरी नहीं मिली ना भाई. नौकरी मिलना भी तो जरूरी है ना. Like, so that is the difference. And I think now that you're asking us these questions, probably Mudit, I don't know if you're feeling similarly. I'm suddenly enlightened to, oh my God, that was a perfect distinction, because that had to be clinical. That art itself of giving an interview has to be clinical. That situation where you're pitching something to someone or communicating disagreement. In fact, like, very often, my girlfriend who works in professional settings, right? She's a corporate, whatever, henchwoman. So she will very often come to me and be like, I have this professional situation, because she has, like, she's not the most extroverted person I've met in my life. She's very introverted, very restricted in her communication, right? And then if I were to follow the advice I give to people or I do for myself, it would not work. That's when I refer to how Mudit thinks and how Mudit's written his stuff. And I'm like, try this. And she's been having breakthrough after breakthrough with communication in that setting. Like, line se breakthrough. I'm not even making this up. To Mudit's credit. So I think that is the distinction also, where mine had to be anecdotal because conversation's artistic. Communication's not. Communication can be broken still to a structure and science. Conversation is happening right now. It's super dynamic. There is no rules because there is 2 clear participants. Communication's usually asynchronous. Right? And so maybe that is the kind of sort of difference that came out brilliantly now that we think of it.
Mudit, do you like remain in a lot of corporate settings? Like most of the times where you spend?
So it just happens to be that through my work, I am constantly in touch with people across the world who are working in corporate settings. in terms of coaching them on presence or influence or communication. So although my own time in corporates was, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago when I was working in consulting, but I would almost say that most of my working time is now in a corporate setting, because that's the problem that is being brainstormed. I have this conversation coming up with one of my team members. This person got passed on a promotion. How do I have that conversation Monday morning? This person heard it from somebody else. There's 3 months later, there is a board meeting and we have to get this proposal passed, and it's not happening. These people are disappointed about this. How do we get it done? So although those are not my problems, that's not my workplace, but then it becomes an extended form of my workplace because I'm working on those problems. So I think the problems you work in become your setting. So that's what's happening.
मई से पहले मेरा कोई कॉर्पोरेट से कोई नाता नहीं. मई में मेरे को पहली इंटर्नशिप मिली, प्रॉपर कॉर्पोरेट इंटर्नशिप, ठीक है. एंड आई वाज टॉकिंग टू समवन और मैंने उसको लास्ट में थैंक्स बोल दिया. शी वाज लाइक, ये क्या बोल रहा तू? और आज मितेश आया, मितेश बोल रहा है कि मुद्दत का मैंने एक आर्टिकल भेजा, वो पढ़ के देख, वो अच्छा है. एंड ही सेड लेट मी नो व्हेन यू रीड इट. आई वाज लाइक, तू ऐसे क्यों बोल रहा है? तू तो वो बोलता था ना, अबे भोसड़ी के पढ़.
कॉर्पोरेट कल्चर
हाँ, क्योंकि उसने 2 महीने पहले अपनी जॉब शुरू की है, मैं 4 महीने इंटर्नशिप कर रहा था, तो हम दोनों का लिंगो ही चेंज हो गया है. हम एक दूसरे को थैंक्स बोलने लगे, हम बोलने लगे लेट मी नो व्हेन यू रीड इट. ये क्या है? असली हमारा तो कन्वर्सेशन. हाँ.
वो प्रखर भी बोला था ना, ही जस्ट ऑफर सजेशंस. उसका वही जाइब था मेरे पे,
हाँ,
कि तुम ये सब चीजें मेरे पे यूज करते हो.
The artifice of the corporate world. It will take the human out of you and limit you to a mechanic existence, seething through melancholy. हाँ.
I had to literally make that difference कि भैया मैं दोस्तों से बात करूं, मेरे को उनको थैंक्स बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है. चोमू लोग हैं, इनको थैंक्स बोलने.
No, but I have the other problem. Is when I meet professional people, I'm still like, I'm me, bro. Like, in way too many situations, I'm me, where I should not be me. And it's like, I would much rather have a little bit of the LinkedIn attitude in my life, where I'm like, this is so well done. Oh my God, yes, woohoo. Instead of always being
direct
man Prakhar instead of character Prakhar, you know, like, so there
फरीदाबाद निकालना पड़ता है अंदर का.
बहुत मुश्किल होती है ब्रो. रात को सोते हुए बार-बार बोलता हूँ अपने साथ.
नहीं, मितेश और मेरा बिल्कुल सेम कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रहा था इस कॉन्वर्सेशन से पहले कि लाइक तुम कॉर्पोरेट में डायरेक्टली जाके किसी की नहीं मार सकते हो, तुम्हें सटली मारनी होती.
You should write a stand-up set on this, bro. This is a great premise.
In fact, there was this one time, there was this one agency owner से बात हो रही थी. So I did not use emojis until she used emojis, which is such a weird thing. I was like, oh, she can use emojis, so maybe emoji use करता. So it was so weird that I was not using emojis, which is such a small thing in chat. But उसने use किया तो मुझे लगा चलो अब वो filter कर रही है, मैं थोड़ा open कर देता filter. So even like sometimes someone is talking, you know, leader is like, oh fuck ये हो गया, and I'm like, oh ये fuck बोलता है, मैं भी बोल सकता हूँ. Like this is so liberating, and it's so weird that we think in like
it is power sets the rules, no?
Power sets the rules, yeah.
Communication rules. Who sets communication rules is the person in charge of that room. Whatever they do, you can do. Roughly speaking, unless roles dictate otherwise. So that is one of the things I think I mentioned somewhere about insults or whatever.
Yes.
Right? That if you are the epicenter of a room, you decide how this room is going to work. You don't even realize that is the case. The harder part is everybody else in that room, or most people apart from that person, want to be that person, but they don't even realize they want to be that person. So they go home unhappy a little bit because they realize they're not the commanding presence in a room. And there is not just one person who can do that. So everybody can do that. Well, not everybody, but let's say there is a critical mass for that. But that is such an important trait for most people in most social circumstances. Why am I not being looked at? Why am I not being shared reality with? That is not the same as approval and validation. That is the same as being acknowledged. Yeah.
Got it.
Was that the basic premise of the book? Even the tagline says it, right? Like, you know, how to talk so the world listens. And
yes.
What were the other taglines or the rejected titles you had? Because obviously
all of them were mine. They were like super boring kind of stuff, at least by Prakhar's level. That's where we may have disagreed on.
Disagreements, yeah.
The title may have a disagreement. Thank you for reminding us of that, Mitesh. So I had like 10 different things. and Prakhar and his designer team, who they were like, "Nahi yaar, we want something that directly sticks out to the audience, that people see that this is a different living, breathing kind of thing that you can interact with, not something that's." And in hindsight, it was probably a good decision in the way that people are consuming the book right now. At least most people who are consuming the book, they're not my corporate clients. Most people who are consuming the book are the people who have a job interview tomorrow, who are in the first, and they want things that nobody can openly talk about. And that's interesting. The other thing, Mitesh, to your question is, Abhi Prakhar, tumne ek wo baat ki कि I'm too much of myself in conversations. I think what's unique about what's going on there is there is a structure to that madness. In the moment that you're being yourself, you know what is the impact you're having on the other person. And they are slightly uncomfortable in that moment, but they're slowly gelling in with you. And what's interesting is you're able to observe that meta process that's going on real time, and you make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, that is the fun part of it. This is something similar to what I was telling my girlfriend the other day. I was like, look, there is a chapter piece on it, Red Road Syndrome. अगर किसी को याद हो, एक रेड रोड सिंड्रोम के बारे में बात करा है मैंने बुक में एक चैप्टर में, about how to avoid awkward situations. Avoid awkward situations. ऐसा करके कुछ है. How to deal with awkward situations. And people don't realize this. People think conversations have to be perfect for charisma to show. God, no, bro. Like the most brilliant kind of expositions you'll have of other people's personality is when you make them so deeply uncomfortable without saying too much. Like, जैसे मेरे को suppose होगा क्या, I'll be talking to someone, suppose a dude who's come to see me, he's 19, he's a young boy, right? अभी बड़ा हो रहा है दुनिया में. I'll very quickly figure out कि इसका insecurity point क्या है, because it's not too difficult, the way people sit, the way people talk. Easy. And then I like, it'll be like, मेरे को नहीं पता क्या है, but I'll just make a comment about बाल उड़ना. And then you'll just wait for the person to slowly lose their composure. But from that point on, you can do something extremely brilliant. Which is that you continue talking normally, like that is not a point I give a shit about, or anybody in the world gives a shit about. Suddenly what will happen is they will see reality differently. Unka dimag genuinely change ho gaya without you even trying to do that. And they will open up on a whole different level. You have no idea how often I hear the words, bro, मैं तेरे को एक secret बता रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैं तेरे को trust करता हूँ. क्यों करते हो trust में? हम इतने अच्छे दोस्त भी नहीं हैं. वो इसलिए trust करते हैं क्योंकि मेरी कंपनी में they could explore a part of their mind they never thought was okay to explore, their insecurity. And that is just one way in which you can actually drive through the red roads and then casually just come back on the green. And people will be like, oh my God. Like, लोगों को डर लगता है awkward होने में. Awkwardness को effortlessly carry कर पाने से ऊपर कोई charm होता नहीं है. Experts know that well. Right? The other thing about your question, Mitesh, about the title of the book, I wanted the book title to be a hashtag, and not a hashtag in the way hashtags are used now, but hashtag in the way hashtags were used before hashtags were a thing. Hashtags were used as meta captions.
Yeah.
I was in Dubai having fun, hashtag the cool life.
Yeah.
The cool life is a caption on I was having fun in Dubai, which is a caption of the post. This is a meta caption in the way where throughout the book, we never use the word don't shut up.
Yeah.
But to describe the book, hashtag don't shut up is best because chup mat rehna, तुम्हें ये लोग advice दे रहे हैं चुप रहने की. ये तुम्हें कह रहे हैं classroom में, board rooms में, ओए बोल मत. मैं कह रहा हूँ मत बोलना, क्या होगा देखेंगे. So there is an element of contrarian sort of marketing advice kind of a thing to the whole situation. Part of it is it's more in sync with probably my personality than Mudit's, although I think both of us agree on the general adage, don't shut up. And then 3, it is a meta caption to the book. It's an advice completely separate from anything written in the book that supplements the book. That is how I structured it. Although initially we started with how to talk so the world listens, or something about how to talk as a young person so the older world listens, I wanted it long and quirky, and then we made that.
It is like it is written
the
on like how to
tagline.
the tagline is all. I was actually going to make that comment कि like पीछे 2 books रखे Invincible और Don't Shut Up. I'll probably buy the second one because of the name.
Right.
This name
So
is
you
like
should have
talking
seen
to me.
that. वो तो मेरी वजह से वो थोड़ा वो हो गया तुषार. His first suggestion was don't shut the fuck up. मैंने तो हाँ पढ़ के भाई ये नहीं हो सकता. मैंने बोला ये नहीं हो सकता. तो भाई he had to settle on don't shut up.
This was a bargain. So this wall right here, I'm going to put a podcast setup. इसके बिल्कुल सामने ये सब अभी मूव होगा. तो यहाँ पे हम एक बहुत बड़ा नियॉन साइन लगवाने की बात कर रहे थे शुरू में, डोंट शट अप का. ठीक है, पर वो साइन होने वाला था डोंट शट अप, बट बिफोर दैट रीड अ फकिंग बुक. राइट, एंड देन सिंस देन वी बीन बार्गेनिंग कि डोंट शट अप रखना है कि फकिंग के साथ मतलब बुक की लाइक समझ रहे हो, लाइक वी बीन टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट. So yeah, I'm very fond of the provocative. I think the provocative is a very interesting means of delivering a message, and I don't think people really appreciate that enough, particularly in India, because we do not want to cause waves and cause ruptures in the way harmony exists in front of us. We are very fond of harmony in the same way as the Chinese are fond of harmony. We are not as fond of freedom. We are not as fond of rebellion or revolution. And in that sense, I stand differently in a very limited space, whatever, in a very inconsequential way, but I stand differently. Which is that I think provocation is probably one of the most interesting tools available to men like Mudit and myself to land a point. Because when you provoke, what you've done for a brief, small second is broken the structure of everything that has existed. You've caused shock, and the shock is an opening. Now you can insert, now you can plant. This is something you learn from the likes of somebody like Osho, where everything he said was provocation. If you ever want to understand what Osho is saying, ignore the first 20% of his talk. The first 20% is to open your butthole up wide. And then you're like, wait, did he say butthole? And then you're like, yes, that with that I mean the mind. Your mind is now open. Now you can finally perceive, you can finally see beyond your preconception. I have battled you out on your playing field. So you are aware that the playing field is bigger than what you thought. That is provocation. And so part of it was inspired from that.
इसको थोड़ा डिफरेंटली भी कंसेप्चुअलाइज कर सकते हैं कि लाइक ओके द थिंग इज कि लाइक पीपल विल लिसन टू यू मोर व्हेन दे हैव टू डिसएग्री एंड नाउ यू हैव सेड समथिंग व्हिच इज लाइक ओके लाइक maybe someone said feminism is bad. Okay, it's a very provocative twist.
Wait, it's not? I doubled on the provocation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So if I say something provocative, उसी टाइम लोग डिसएग्री करने के लिए रेडी हो जाएंगे, तो वो तुम्हारी हर एक बात सुनेंगे. बट अगर तुम्हारी हर एक बात सुनने के बाद भी सेंस बना रही है, you have got their attention, like they have listened to everything you have said, and you have stumped them कि like मैं तो डिसएग्री करने वाला था, लेकिन ये तो कुछ ऐसी बात बोल के जो like सेंस बना रही है.
So Shah, what you're saying is anecdotal, but there's also research on that. And the research says that you are more willing to change your opinion based on what somebody said to you who doesn't look and talk like you, as compared to somebody who is comparatively homogeneous.
Oh, that's so brilliant, bro. I was listening to something yesterday about how for the legacy of a great man to be established, first they have to die. Then everybody they know has to die. Then everybody who knew who they know have to die. And then it can begin happening. Because आप जब तक जीवे तो आपकी इज्जत इतनी हो नहीं सकती. कर ही नहीं सकते, क्योंकि आपके आसपास और इन्फ्लुएंशियल लोग हैं जो आपकी आलोचना करते हैं ना, उन्हें पता है. Right? Like there has to be that certain distance for somebody to act like Karl Marx becomes Karl Marx and not that stupid communist idiot. Only like 60 years after his 70 years after his death. And that is to say that like none of what I have to say will ever work for my family. They don't bother. They're like, अबे अपना लड़का है प्रखर यार. मेरे दोस्त कहते हैं, अबे हट साले में तू बताएगा.
ये कभी नहीं सुधरेगा.
हाँ, right, exactly. हमारी बात वो आसपास वाले लोगों को लैंड नहीं करती. बहुत रेयरली. मैं गिन के बता सकता हूँ वो 2 या 3 लोग जो एक्चुअली मेरे नजदीक रहते हैं और मेरी बात सुनते हैं. बाकी लोग so there is something to that where if there is familiarity, if there is homogeneity, if there is any similarity before something has been said, it's less likely believable.
इसलिए लाइक इंडियंस गोरों की बात ज्यादा सुनते हैं शायद.
नहीं भैया वो उसका
भाई तुम उसको खोल दोगे वो अभी 20 मिनट वो टॉपिक पे बोल
हाँ मैं इसको लेके मैं निकल जाऊंगा
स्ट्रीम हो गया
मैं ना यहाँ निकल जाता हूँ
बट लाइक जैसे दोस्तों से भी बात करते हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ द दोस्त नहीं सुनेंगे, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स तो सुनेंगे ही नहीं। लेकिन जब वो तो मूड में आता है ना कि हाँ अब मैं तेरे को गुस्से में बताऊंगा कि हाँ मैं क्या बोलना चाह रहा हूँ और तेरे को सुननी ही पड़ेगी, तो मैं वो स्विच आना चाहिए तभी वो बंदा सुनेगा। मेरे दोस्त को लाइक परसों तरसों ही कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो रही थी एंड मैं उसको समझाया जा रहा हूँ सुबह से प्यार से कि हाँ बेटा ये कर ले मान जा, ठीक है, वो मान ही नहीं रहा। फिर रात को मैं स्कूटी चलाते गुस्से में बोल रहा हूँ उसे, मैं गुस्सा नहीं करता, मैं लाइक बहुत ही लाइक हाई लेवल पे जाकर मैं गुस्से में उसको बोल रहा हूँ।
गुस्सा आता है तेरे को?
क्या
स्कूटी चलाते हुए गुस्सा आता है तेरे को?
स्कूटी चलाते ही नहीं, सुबह से उसको समझा रहा था, मैं मान नहीं रहा था तो मैं गुस्सा हो गया। तो मैं उसको स्कूटी चला रहा हूँ, पीछे मेरी बात सुन रहा, गुस्से में स्कूटी चला रहा हूँ कि सुन ले भाई मेरी बात। उसके बाद उसने सुन ली, उसके बाद जाके उसने कर दिया होगा, लेकिन वो स्विच जरूरी था।
बोला होगा साले ठोक देगा ये, कहीं सुन लेता हूँ, हाँ बोल देता हूँ ये कहीं भी घुमा देगा भाई। हाँ आप तो बिल्कुल तुषार भाई, आप तो बहुत बिल्कुल सच कह रहे हो भाई थोड़ा दिक्कत है।
उसने सुन ली, मेरे को नहीं
गुस्सा does the same thing provocation does, no? It shocks. It shocks.
कि तुषार तो गुस्सा नहीं करता।
Think about it. Anger is a learned behavior we learn as kids. It's not like, and we learn it. Anger is also a bargaining tool. मेरे को ये चाहिए. That is what essentially anger is. And the 2-point methodology of anger is shock and then ask. That's it. Right? Provocation is a more refined version of that. It's like you shock, you let the shock settle, you say something. And the thing about convincing is the best way to convince somebody is to make them think they came up with the idea.
Bowing the seed in the mind, the time, the inception idea.
वो बहुत ट्रिकी होता है, बट अगर सामने वाले को लग गया ना मैंने सोचा ये, भाई तुम उसको बोल दो नहीं यार ये नहीं, ना कैसे नहीं करेंगे, मेरा आइडिया है, like you know.
It works, it really works. एक बार मेरा एक दोस्त था, लाइक मेरे को बस मजे लेने थे उसके, तो मैंने उसको जाके बोल दिया कि हाँ ये कब से पसंद आ रही है तेरे को, ठीक है। और वो बोलने लग गया मैंने तो तेरे को कुछ ऐसा कहा नहीं, तेरे को कैसे पता चला? आई एम लाइक ओके वेट अब आएगा मजा। फिर मेरे को पता चला वो एक्चुअली उस लड़की के बारे में कंफ्यूज है, और फिर मैं शुरू हो गया कि हाँ यार तू उससे बात, हाँ तू 3 दिन से उससे बात कर रहा है, उसके साथ दूसरा लड़का घूम रहा था, तो तब तू फ्रस्ट्रेट हो रखा था, मतलब कुछ तो चल रहा है। तो मेरे को बस यूं ही लगा बहुत मजा आया। फिर मेरे को लगा, मेरे को दूसरी दोस्त बोल रही उसको गैस लाइट ना करे, लाइक गैस लाइट का मतलब क्या होता है?
Coming to the book again, we had this question that what was your ideal book in your mind while writing this book as a reference, you know, कि ये book ऐसी book चाहिए हमें, या फिर 2-3 book का combination करके, you know, कि ऐसा part इस book में था तो हमें ऐसा रखना है इस part में. Was there any ideal book in your mind, or author, or maybe person?
प्रखर, ध्यान है तुमको हमने एक बुक रेफर की थी जो कि बहुत फेमस है, लेट्स सी इफ यू रिमेंबर।
ब्रिटानिका एनसाइक्लोपीडिया?
नहीं we mentioned it has to be the encyclopedia of communication, but we didn't mention that. For all बोलो, it's not so far, it's very close.
Dictionary, नहीं भाई मेरे को नहीं याद.
How to make friends and influence people. So our
like of course Bible
it has to be modeled on something that can be easily picked up, applied next hour, applied Tuesday morning, Friday night, whatever it is. So that was the model for us. It has to be simple in that way.
हाँ वो तो था, बट हम इसको स्ट्रक्चर हमने किया एज एन एनसाइक्लोपीडिया कि आपको ये एंड से एंड तक नहीं पढ़ना, आप कोई भी चैप्टर कभी भी उठाओ, जब आपकी सिचुएशन है तब पढ़ो. सब पढ़ने से कुछ होना भी नहीं है ब्रो. तो ये तुम्हें क्या लग रहा है पढ़ के समझ जाओगे? नहीं, करके सीखोगे, और कोई तरीका नहीं है. जब करना है तो 18 टाइप की इंफॉर्मेशन का क्या फायदा जब करना एक है. तो पहले एक उठाओ, एक करो, फिर दूसरा उठाना. राइट? तो वो इट इज स्ट्रक्चर्ड इन अ वे वेयर इट्स लाइक यू कैन पिक अप एनी पार्ट ऑफ द बुक, एनी पेज यू कैन बिगिन रीडिंग, एंड इट इज, इसे फ्रैक्टल कहते हैं ना. सपोज्ड टू बी अ फ्रैक्टल इन दैट वे, वेयर एवरी कंपोनेंट ऑफ द फ्रैक्टल रिप्रेजेंट्स द फ्रैक्टल एज अ होल. That's the job the book is trying to do. It's an encyclopedia. So, yeah.
Can you make this part a little more clear? I didn't understand the whole fractal thing.
Okay, so for instance, we pick up any of the books I have which are not available here, but you pick up any book and you open any chapter. You start reading, it will not make sense. Some chapters are weaker than the others. Some chapters are less valuable than the others, so on and so forth. This is not the case with this one. Each chapter is a different communication, completely separate, independent of the other chapters. Very rarely are two chapters speaking to each other. It's not it's not linear. It's many dots on a piece of paper as opposed to a line. That is what I mean. So the fractal nature of things is essentially, a fractal is a design where if you take क्या समझाऊं कि मैं सपोज एक कंपोनेंट लेता हूं उस डिजाइन का, उसको जूम इन करता हूं, उस जूम इन में भी वही डिजाइन था जो ओरिजिनल था. So it's an infinite sort of, it's like going to infinity kind of a thing.
It's like a mandala.
Maybe that's,
have you seen mandala?
Mandala is a fractal also. हाँ वो नशे वाले बात करते हैं ना उस बारे में.
मैं नशे नहीं करता मम्मी, मैं नशे नहीं करता.
At least on record.
मम्मी सॉरी मम्मी मैंने नहीं पिया.
मैं नहीं जानता मंडाला वगैरह क्या होता है. मम्मी कल गूगल करी मंडाला क्या होता है.
गंदी बात मम्मी.
The other thing is also that most books are written in a way, I think, is that the author has a certain expertise. So there is a hammer and there is probably a nail, but because they have the hammer, they write that book based on their expertise, which is great because a reader will invest time and it better be your expertise. How we did this was कि अपन बैठे, अपन ने बोला कि let's start with the life of a 18-year-old, 17-year-old, throughout till the time he becomes 26, 28 or 30. क्या-क्या conversations हो रही है उसकी लाइफ में, शुरू से शुरू करते हैं. We literally imagined a character. ये यहाँ पे रहता है, गोरेगांव में रहता है, मुंबई में रहता है, इंडिया में रहता है. क्या कर रहा है वो? अच्छा कॉलेज गया तो उसको फ्रेंड्स बनाने हैं, फिर ये किया वो. तो अगर आप चैप्टर्स को पढ़ते जाओगे, it is like a conversation that a person might be having every single day as that person is growing up in his or her life. So that is one of the other ways how we would like to believe the book is a little different, is that we discovered a bunch of nails first. And then we thought, okay, what are the hammers that we might have that we can hit these nails? And those nails then become different problems of the book. So anybody reading the book can figure out ये 2 3 4 चीजों के बारे में मुझे पढ़ना है. And they can start there.
मुझे पूरी बुक पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. मतलब अगर मैं उठा रहा हूँ like as a reader, like मुझे पूरी बुक पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. Even if I read like 2 to 3 chapters which are relevant to me, like it's good enough.
Absolutely.
It depends on how much problem you're willing to solve. It's a create your own journey book. This is the DIY edition, DIY edition of a book.
So I was listening to Mudit's journey, like properly. Like I was listening to Mudit's journey properly during the podcast you did, and it sort of felt like because Mudit was not doing something like good in the other areas of his life, and this was one area where he like sort of got good feedback,
positive feedback,
sort of a positive feedback. So do you like public speaking because you do it well, or it's the opposite? You like it, that's why you do it well.
And this is the question for both of us.
This is in the book. I talk about how confidence is built in the book. I think there is a chapter on social confidence, and it's so fake it till you make it is great until you get the first piece of evidence. Once you get the first piece of evidence, you run with it. Right? So I'm imagining, I don't know if this is Mudit's story as he would tell it himself, and I don't know if this was early parts of his career and so on and so forth. I'm going to leave that factual accuracy to Mudit's department. But so he goes on stage one day, he's like, listen, I can do it. He does it very well. People are like, oh my bloody God. And Mudit's like, hell yeah. He comes home, he's like, hell yeah, I can do this again. Then he carries the same confidence to something else and then something else. And then eventually it starts working. And it's cyclical, bro. My dad would say this to me about mathematics, right? I'd be like, मेरे को math नहीं पसंद. कहते पसंद तुम्हें इसलिए नहीं, marks नहीं आते. Marks आएंगे पसंद आ जाएगी. और फिर पसंद आएगी तो और marks आएंगे. Cycle है, चलानी शुरू करो. And I was like, oh my God, पापा ज़्यादा सच बोल दिया आपने. But it is true. It's the harsh truth is we like what people like us doing. And then we get better at it because we like it. And then we like it because we are good at it. And then we are good at it because we like it. And they're all the same thing. That's fundamentally why chase your interests and curiosities is important. Because you have a natural edge there. People cannot do what you can do. Why are you fighting the war everyone else is fighting? That's such a dumb move. There is obviously people who are better than you. Like, okay, Hikaru Nakamura, one of my favorite creators in the world is a super grandmaster, world number 5 chess player. He stopped playing professional chess because he understood going to the top. Listen, boss, I'm never going to beat Magnus. I'm never going to be the greatest player of my generation, much less all generations. We have the GOAT here. We have a Lionel Messi. We have a Cristiano Ronaldo sitting in front of us. I can be a Luis Suarez, a Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I'm never going to be that guy. Right? He understood that clear. So what did he do? Streaming karte na. And he became the world's number 1 chess streamer. He found leveraged that and did that well. Where I think he chess. My mic?
Your mic is
थोड़ा zoom in zoom out हुआ है वो voice.
Check.
थोड़ा close करो.
क्या हो गया एकदम से?
अब better.
ठीक है? हाँ.
We could hear till the end, bro. No worries.
अच्छा हाँ मैं कह रहा था so with him he understood that there is a better war to be fought somewhere else which aligns with his interests too, and now he brings more popularity to chess. He's probably the most known super grandmaster in the world, even more than Magnus, even more than Fischer or Kasparov. Even though everybody knows Fischer, Kasparov, Magnus are way better than Hikaru. But Hikaru has a fan following. He was recently playing world वो जो candidates tournament होता है जिससे आप championship fight करने जाते हो Magnus के against world champion के. Bro उसकी fan following अलग ही चल रही है bro. वो कोई tournament नहीं खेलता पूरे साल. वो सिर्फ stream करता है. लोग Hikaru go Hikaru. मैं Hikaru के लिए cheer कर रहा हूँ. Because he figured out a lateral move that worked to his advantage. He makes more money than any chess player probably. Way more money than him. He's way more popular than them. And he has way more fun with people doing that. He has more fun. कहता है मेरे को स्ट्रेस ही नहीं है. ये लोग स्ट्रेस में मरे जा रहे हैं टूर्नामेंट की प्रिपरेशन में. मौज करने जाऊंगा टूर्नामेंट में. Right? And so what that is an indicator of is the fact that there is so many lateral wars to be fought. Why are you fighting the same fight everybody else is? Because fear.
Okay.
Go on.
Have you heard of Ninja?
वो भी streamer है. I've heard of the guy, but I've never.
He's not the best player. He's not the best player, but you know about Ninja and know someone else. And I don't even know about someone else. But I know Ninja कि like okay, Ninja is a Fortnite player. That's the same example.
Ninja. पर मेरे को और भी Fortnite player पता है क्योंकि मैं Fortnite content.
I don't.
Cypher PK और ऐसे Nick A30 ये सब मेरे को पता है.
मेरे को तब पता चला when Ninja was not selected for the tournament or something. And I was like ये तो अच्छा player था ना. तो मेरा दोस्त बता रहा है ये तो अच्छा प्लेयर है ही नहीं है बस स्ट्रीम करता है.
He's famous.
सबसे अच्छा प्लेयर बूगा है.
I don't know.
The young kid who won the.
See, like I'm so nerdy about shit like this. I had no idea. हाँ बूगा bro. बूगा के kills insane है bro. Fortnite content में देखता हूँ. Fortnite and chess content I really like. Poker content I really like.
Have you ever played Mario?
Of course.
I will suggest you one video. I will suggest you one video. You'll love it.
ठीक है. हमारी तरफ से जय श्री राम. दशहरा की आपको बहुत बहुत बधाइयां. और दिवाली पे आप बिल्कुल पटाखे फोड़े. हमारी तरफ से कोई रोक रुकावट नहीं लगेगी. आप जिए अपना जीवन. और अगर आपको हमारी बातें पसंद आए तो जरूर खरीदिए हमारी बुक जो श्री मुदित यादव और अनफंड प्रखर गुप्ता ने साथ में बैठ के. Ladies and gentlemen, bring that in. Bring the closing music. है closing music?
Yeah.